the larger percentage of the population, from my understanding, is what's known as defective. And a defective is someone who doesn't feel smart enough, doesn't feel good enough, doesn't feel capable enough. You don't feel gifted. And Kevin actually put it in a really, my business partner, he put it in a really good way. He said, everyone is afraid that all of them is not enough or that all of them is too much.
Welcome back to the Ignition Path podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Goodknight. I've got a wonderful guest today. I can't wait to hear more about his path. We had a pre-call, of course, like I always do. And I was super excited to get on with Alan Lazaros today to talk about his entrepreneurial path. It's very unique. He is a young man who has had a drive ever since he was old enough to realize that there was something called business out there. So, Alan, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Kyle, gratitude first. I'm great. Thank you. Gratitude first. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I started listening to podcasts 9 years ago, and they really helped me sort of reorient my life in a much more positive direction. So now I'm very grateful to be able to help people with that. So yeah, thank you.
No problem. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Alan. Like what was your entrepreneurial path? Like how did you come up through? Did you have a business? Were you a 9-to-5er in the beginning? Like, I know my entrepreneurial path, I always tell people it started when my dad handed me a lawnmower and I realized I could push it around my yard, but then I could make money in next door.
So I think a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, they reflect back and realize in hindsight that they were very entrepreneurial. I remember I had a little science kit and we created a little bug repellent that we were thinking about selling. I remember sitting at the kitchen table talking with my best friend at the time. We were going to create a company. We were dreaming about a company, a video game company called LazCore. My last name's Lazaros. His last name's Corton. And we were going to be LazCore. And we were going to create a video game called Musket, the American Revolution. And it was going to be kind of like the movie The Patriot, but a first person / third person shooter video game. So ever since I was a little kid, I was a super dreamer. And I realized in hindsight how weird some of that stuff is. I was a semi-pro gamer and I dreamed of snowboarding and I dreamed of all these things. I wanted to be an Abercrombie model. I actually did some modeling. It's just been kind of wild. And I realize now that, again, I didn't know this at the time, a lot of people don't have a lot of self-belief. And now that I coach so many people and I'm now a business coach and I have 30 people on my roster right now, but I've coached hundreds over the years. And I come to realize that if you don't have self-belief, you're in a lot of trouble and you can build it. And so, yeah, my entrepreneurial journey started with, as a kid, mostly adversity. Father passed away when I was 2. Stepfather left when I was 14. My real last name is actually McCorkle. I know we have a short form episode here, so I got to crank on this. I got to tell you this quickly. I'm condensing 35 years into 3 minutes here.
Yeah, as we always do on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And so my real last name is McCorkle. My father was part of a big Irish Catholic family, Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette. He had 5 other siblings and he passed away when he was 28 in a car accident. My stepfather's last name is Lazaros. I took his last name around age 7. And when we were sort of becoming the Lazaroses, we didn't really associate much with the McCorkles. When my stepfather left, not only did he take 90% of the income with him, but he also, him and his entire extended family left. So I haven't seen a single one of them since. I have talked to my stepdad a little bit on Facebook Messenger, but I haven't seen him. Same year, 14 years old, mom gets in a fight with my aunt Sandy, her sister, and we get kind of ostracized from my mom's side of the family. So kind of by the time I'm 14, my sister moved out that year with her older boyfriend too. So it was just me and my mom in that house. Stepfather got the apartment building and the yacht. We got the house and the dog. And we went from upper middle class. Stepfather made a lot of money, hospital computers for a company called AGFA, to basically I get free lunch at school now because our income is so low. My mom trades in her BMW for a little Honda Civic. We're not going to starve by any means, but I was a broke high school and college student for sure. And I went from I can't wait to go to college to, even if I do get to go to college, it's $50,000 a year to go to WPI. That was my dream. Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's kind of like a mini MIT, and I wanted to be a computer engineer. And even if I do get in, how am I going to go? And so I get straight A's through all of high school. I get all the scholarships and financial aid I can. I get my computer engineering degree. I get my master's in business, and then I'm off to the races in corporate. I climb the corporate ladder quite a bit, get to almost $200,000 a year, and I'm condensing this a lot. But I'm in my mid-20s, and then I get in my car accident. I get in a car accident. I'm up in New Hampshire, my little cousin. I end up on the wrong side of the road, dark winter night in 2015. The snowbanks are covering the yield sign. I was supposed to yield, I didn't. I end up getting in a head-on collision. And fortunately, I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat that I bought in cash because back then I just wanted to bankroll money. To me, wealth was the answer. And so I just bought a really cheap car, but luckily it was a super safe car.
Yeah.
German engineered steel trap.
Being a paramedic, I understand some of those safety cars, those Subarus,
Right.
Subarus, your Volkswagens. Yeah, absolutely.
The Volkswagen totally saved my life.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was a little Honda Civic, the whole front end was completely smashed in, but the frame stayed, airbags deployed. So luckily I'm still here. And we weren't physically hurt, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I was completely rattled by that because my stepfather passed away when he was 28 in a car accident. So for me, that was my quarter life existential crisis. And that's when I had a little company when I was in college too, but that's when I went all in on entrepreneurship. That's when I started my own company called Alan Lazaros LLC, what you'll never learn in school, but desperately need to know. And then eventually started my own podcast called Conversations Change Lives. Then I teamed up with my business partner, Kevin. He had a podcast called Hyperconscious Podcast. I was his first guest. He was my first guest. And then we rebranded to Next Level University about 4 or 5 years later. And here we are 9, almost 10 years later. And now we have Next Level University. We have a 22-person team. We have a global show, 175 countries. And it's gotten really quite wild. But it all started small, just like all things do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will want to say, backing up just a little bit, sorry for your loss. I lost my mom when I was early 20s, early to mid 20s. And so I know what it's like to lose a parent. It's not fun, and it leaves a hole for the rest of your life. But you constantly try to fill that hole with mom would have been proud of me because I kind of got my entrepreneurial spirit. Honestly, both of my parents were very entrepreneurial, and my mom owned 26 properties and did it in a way that nobody else was doing it at the time to get them for cheap. And then I was one of the helpers to help fix things with my dad as I grew up. So knowing that, and you probably don't have much of the entrepreneurial spirit from your father just because you were so young, but it's weird how life repeats itself. When my dad was in his 40s, he chopped the middle finger off. Well, when I was in my 40s, I chopped one of my fingers off. not all of it, just the tip of it, and it's just one of those things. I'm like, okay, life is repeating itself and it's actually showing its ugly head. So for you to get in your car accident in your late 20s, just like your father, it's just, the universe is real, everyone. What you put out is what you get back. And I'm a firm believer in that. Yes, you can ask for forgiveness for the bad stuff you put out and hopefully it doesn't come back to bite you in the ass. But when it comes to, building a business, talk a little bit about the fear that you had when you decided to go from a $200,000 job because that's something that I'm actually working on right now with some of that. What you said is that self, like focusing on yourself and, being a paramedic, I serve my community. So I'm often putting everyone else in front of me, and I've done it for years. And it affects you because later on in life you get anxiety, and come to find out when you really learn about anxiety, it's about fear. It's about not loving yourself and not showing yourself that you have worth. So then the doubt demons come in and whatnot. So talk about when you made the transition, how you focused on self and how you focused on what the fear was to do what you did.
Well, the first thing, and I that's a really good synopsis there, but what I've found is the fear is different for different core wounds. And there's something called internal family systems that I think the Inside Out movies do a really good job of sort of portraying how we all have these different emotions. And if you've seen Inside Out 2, anxiety is a big part of it. And magnificent films, by the way, by Pixar and Disney. But ultimately, after coaching so many people from so many different backgrounds, cultures, countries, industries, ethnicities, all this stuff, you start to realize that how you have a different fear than other people. So the main 3 fears that I work with my clients and that I see and that I notice, we all have 1,000 fears, but there's a couple big ones that are really big that are running the majority. It's like the Pareto principle, 20% of effort on this one fear will make 80% of the difference. And so the 3 main fears are fear of failure, fear of judgment, and then fear of success. The third one was mine. So I actually don't resonate with the self-doubt side in terms of competence self-doubt. So when it comes to competence, and I want to explain this briefly because this has been really powerful for me helping different individuals and myself as well. So I have a business partner named Kevin, and Kevin, his main fear is failure. And we were perfect business partners for each other because my main fear was actually success. And so we all kind of live in this weird little comfort zone where we don't want to be a failure compared to our peers, but we also don't want to be too much better than our peers because we then get kind of energetically ostracized from the group. And so I was sort of and this is actually pretty scary to talk about, but for anyone who's out there who feels gifted, when you're a kid, you know it, but you kind of hide it because you don't fit in. I mean, when you're a kid, I remember being a kid and I used to wonder why does everyone else, things come so easy to me. I'm super smart. I don't have to try that hard. Everything seems like I'm the best at everything, even with minimal effort. Like, granted, I'm a big fish in a small pond in hindsight, but ultimately, if you're gifted, you basically create this fear of success. And the reason why is, and I understand this in hindsight because I've done a lot of therapy in my 30s. All the abandonment stuff from losing my father, my stepdad leaving, my mom's family sort of going away, not associated with my birth father's family until after 14 years old. I realized that my biggest fear, my deepest fear about starting a business was being ostracized from my group. And there's not a single friend from pre-26, pre-car accident, who I'm still in consistent contact with. Now, most of that is by choice. I obviously could, but ultimately that was the deepest fear, is being alone. So I think that if you're out there and you resonate with the gifted thing and being alone and fear of abandonment and fear of, if I were to really go all in on my potential, I would basically be unrelatable and unlikable, then that's you are definitely in the rarity. There's a very small percentage of the population that is like that. The larger percentage of the population, from my understanding, there's a lot of research behind this too, I'm not just talking, is what's known as defective. And a defective is someone who doesn't feel smart enough, doesn't feel good enough, doesn't feel capable enough. You don't feel gifted. And Kevin actually put it in a really, my business partner, put it in a really good way. He said, everyone is afraid that all of them is not enough or that all of them is too much. I'm afraid that all of me is too much. I'm not at all afraid of the not enough thing. Like, if anything, I'm going to be too intense, too motivated, too driven, too intelligent, too much. I'm going to trigger everyone's insecurities and no one's going to like me. So Kevin and I go give a speech, right? He's afraid he's not going to add value. I know I'll add value, but I'm afraid I'm going to be hated. He knows everyone's going to love him. He's funny and likable and relatable. I'm not relatable at all. I'm this weird esoteric computer engineer who is easily villainizable. And very few people feel bad for someone who's not an underdog, even though I was an underdog from upbringing perspective. So ultimately, all of that is really scary to share. But if you're out there watching or listening to this, when it comes to how I overcame that, I don't think my story is going to be super relatable because I never had any doubt that we would succeed in business. I did have a ton of doubts about succeeding in intimate relationships, friends and family, and that's been the hardest part for me. For me, the success side has always come fairly easily when it comes to external achievement, when it comes to competence, confidence. I think there's two types of confidence. There's competence, achievement confidence, external. I can go do the thing, get the gold, build the resume, build the cover letter, get the job. That for me feels very easy. The confidence in who you are as a person is a different type of courage and confidence. And that's what I call social courage. So the people who are afraid of success need more social courage. They need to put themselves out there. They need to speak up for what they believe in. They need to actually be okay with shining and outshining others, even though they're insecure. And if you're on that side, you're in the small majority of the population, small minority rather. If you're afraid of not being smart enough, not good enough, not good looking enough, not capable enough, that's more common. And that means you need to build self-belief. So for people who are really good at competence and achievement, you probably have a lot of self-belief, but maybe not a lot of social courage. For people who are fawners, appeasers, people who pretend they're worse than they are to make other people feel better, then you're in my camp, and you most likely need social courage. For the people who you most likely have low self-worth. So you talked about self-belief and self-worth. Self-belief is I can achieve the thing. I can build the castle. Self-worth is I deserve to live there. I'm going to protect and honor the castle, and I'm not going to let my friends come in and spill beer on the carpets. And that's about boundaries. That's about social courage, that kind of thing. So self-belief is one thing. Self-worth is another. Very few people have both. It's very, very hard to build both. And you can build them, and there's a formula to build them. And it took me 35 years to figure this out. But ultimately, when it comes to my entrepreneurial journey, I don't think it's super relatable because the success side I never really questioned. I only ever questioned the how much pain I'm going to have to endure when it comes to my social circles.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. And that does make sense. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that resonate with that, because often when we build our businesses, and it's almost like a hyper focus. And then you like, there for a while when I was building a different business before my voiceover business and before my podcasting business, I was putting so much time into another business that I was telling friends, no, I can't make it. No, I can't go. No, I can't go to the game. No, I can't do this. And so eventually they literally just stopped calling me.
Yeah.
And then it came in with, why aren't they calling me anymore? Well, they're not calling me because I always said no,
Yep.
so you got to get that, when it comes, and I'm a very social being. I call myself the extrovert personally. So I don't go into a room thinking I don't know anybody. I go into a room, I'm like, who am I going to meet next? That's who I am. It's a balance that I've had to myself deal with, some people call it well, you can talk to anybody, Kyle. It's like a superpower. I'm like, yeah, I guess when you really look back at it, I guess it is when you have so many people that aren't that way, and I'm married to an introvert, but so opposites do attract. So it's one of those things where it does resonate with me a little bit about how you say it. And I'm sure, and how you explain it. And it's just, I've never had it explained that way to me, with people that do have their own little private genius. I have another superpower that I know what level is. Like, what? Yeah, I can put a picture on the wall and say, that's level. I don't need a level. And then people test me and they put the level up, and lo and behold, it's level. I'm like, I told you it's level. I'm like, how do you not know it's? I mean, I told you it's level. You can test me if you want, but how about you just go ahead and just trust my professional opinion. So I totally get parts of genius that are around and sprinkled in with all of our. I think all of us that are entrepreneurs have some form of genius, or we wouldn't be here.
Yep.
So real quick, when it comes to, and we do have a little bit more time than I expected. So I just saw something drop off, so we're good to go. So we don't have to rush now.
Okay.
So we don't
You'll see my tempo change a little now. I thought we had to cram this into 20 minutes.
Well, we've still, probably another 15 minutes. So,
Okay.
So let's talk now about what you're doing now. As you mentioned earlier, that you're a business coach and you have an organization behind that. So let's dive into that, and basically, what type of people are you, like, what is your ideal client, the people that you'd want to click on that link below when I put everything in the chat about who you are and what you are and how to find you. Like, go ahead and tell us all about your business, of what you're doing now. And definitely I love the path. All Ignition Path podcasts start with the path, and because that's what the name is, right? So it's how did we ignite our path, and the ignition from our path gets us to where we're at now. So, and we're at that stage of the episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, everybody, of course. But before Alan goes into this, let's just talk about that for a little bit, about what you do now and how you service people and how you help people.
So I'm very blessed at this stage, almost 10 years into my journey, 9 years. But all I really do now, more than anything, I mean, ultimately it's leadership, but underneath that umbrella of leadership is podcasting, training, and coaching. And that's kind of the only three things that I allocate on my calendar nowadays. But the main thing is coaching, business coaching in particular. And when you ask sort of who is a good fit, I have this goal achievement system that's actually very simple, but it's very challenging to implement. And that's, I think, a good lesson of life in general. So a picture a triangle with in the center is your goal, whatever your goal is. You can name within reason any goal you want. You're not going to beat LeBron James at basketball, but within reason, whatever goal you want. And then there's three things that have to be aligned. And this is the three parts of the triad. The first one is metrics. I'm an engineer, so everything's math. There's four modalities of thinking. One is numbers, mathematics, logic, rationality. One of them is energy. One of them is pictures and images, and then the other one's words and concepts. Most people are words and concepts. Very few people are words and numbers and metrics. So you have to, if you want a certain goal, you have to track the right metrics. The second one is habits. You have to have the right habits. So metrics and habits. And then after habits, it's identity. So one of the reasons why most people, I looked this up in January 1st, we did a meetup on how to set goals and for 2024. And I looked this up, and only 4% of people, the latest research, ever have written goals that they achieve. And to me, one of the main reasons why, at least what I've found in my coaching, is people are setting goals that are not in alignment with who they are. So, for example, I'm ectomorphic, so I'm a tall, skinny, lanky guy. I've got these giraffe legs. Now, I'm a bodybuilder, so I'm a little bit built, but I'm never going to win a strongman competition. I'm just not that strong. I mean, I go to the gym with Kev, for example, and he's always stronger than I am. But if we were to run a marathon, I would smoke him every time, even if he put in massive effort. So we all have a natural inclination. And back to the genius comment that you meant earlier, there's a book called Multiple Intelligences, and there's 9 different facets of intelligence. And some people have all of them, some people have one of them, but we all have at least one of them. And kinesthetic is one of them. And ultimately, the point I'm making, though, is most people set goals based on an inaccurate view of self. You want to believe you're an extrovert when you're actually an introvert. You want to believe you're an introvert when you're actually an extrovert. You want to believe you're intelligent when you're really actually not that statistically intelligent. You want to believe you're not intelligent when you really are. If you don't have an accurate view of self, you kind of can't set goals that are achievable. It's like being in a boat trying to get somewhere on land. And I think that's why most people never actually achieve their goals. And so to me, the people I'm looking for, number one, humility. I don't want to work with anyone who doesn't have what I refer to as inward humility. Externally, I understand that I appear arrogant, and I know why. Because if I figured this out finally when I was in my mid-30s. I said, oh my God, I know why I look so arrogant. Because if I have self-belief at level 10 and I only have level 8 humility, I'm going to look level 2 arrogant. Whoa. Even though I might have it level 8 humility, which might be more than most people. Because I'm sitting there, well, I read books and I take courses every morning and I'm doing the work. Why do I seem so arrogant to everybody? Oh, they don't believe in themselves. And I don't practice building humility enough. Because if you have high self-belief, arrogance is the weakness. And humility is the superpower. So for me, I don't coach anyone who doesn't have humility. I mean, if you show any level of entitlement or arrogance, or immaturity, I'm just not even interested. Don't even reach out. But if you do have tons of humility and work ethic, you and me will vibe so well,
right?
And it'll be unbelievable. And so who am I looking for? That's the answer. What do? I help you reverse engineer your goals, track the right metrics, habits, and then align that with your identity, because most people have an identity that is wildly inaccurate. I have these 3 circles that I use. So the outer circle is who you want others to believe you are, which is who you act like in social situations. So it's a persona. Some people dial it down, some people dial it up. So right now I'm probably dialing it down a little, believe it or not, even though most people think I'm dialing it up. The second circle is who you want to believe you are. This is the delusion. This is I call it delulu. This is when you're self-delusional. Like, I want to be a professional bodybuilder, even though there's no way that's ever going to happen. I'm a skinny, lanky ectomorph who's a white Caucasian male, right? So it's just never going to happen. It is what it is. Okay. And then the center circle is who you really are. This is who you are when no one's watching. This is who you actually are, not who you believe you are, not who you want others to believe you are. This is not Instagram or social media. This is who you really are. And usually it's only our spouses that know who we really are. And they usually know who we really are more than we do. And that's why they're the biggest mirror, especially for ego-driven men, by the way. So the car accident for me made all 3 of those circles the same. And the only way to achieve success in life is to have an accurate view of self, an accurate view of people, and an accurate view of the world. It's like a GPS with the wrong data. And so the only way to have all 3 of those is to study how you work and why you work that way, how the world works and why it works that way, and how other people work and why they work that way. And unfortunately, most of us surround ourselves with persons, places, things, and ideas that continue to dilute and distort our reality. And it's kind of like a self-driving Tesla that doesn't realize a truck is coming, because it has an occluded camera. And so we have all these blind spots that people try to tell us, but we don't want to see it because we just want to keep this inflated view of self. And so ultimately the car accident completely burnt down my ego. And I've spent my entire next 10 years, essentially 9 years, almost 10, trying to keep my ego from distorting my reality. Because all that regret that I felt in that car accident, I realized I wasn't living true to my true potential because I wasn't living true to my true self. And I think a lot of us feel that way. And so ultimately, my coaching helps you set goals that are aligned with who you really are, track the right metrics and habits along the way, and then align your identity, which is who you aspire to be, with who you really are.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Now, that's not where you started with that. So this is where you're at now when it comes to how you run your coaching services. So when it comes to that path, real quick, how many mistakes did you make? Because another thing too, I love the humility. I feel I try to be as humble as possible, seeing the things that I've seen in my career, being in the healthcare field for almost 30 years now. So, you get humbled real quick when you see the things that I see and have seen. So, I think it's a big part, people strive to be humble, but when it comes to how you found that in your path inside of this new version of your company, talk about that path just for a little bit.
Well, one example of humility that I think is really powerful is you told me on our pre-call that carbon monoxide detectors are so important. I have them all outfitted all over my house now. And I think that's an indicator of humility. I learn from you and then I implement, right?
Yeah.
And so you might have saved my pets or saved my life or whatever, right? I really appreciate it. And to me, I'm always on the lookout for people who have been through hard things that I can learn from. And you had that really tragic family that you saw died of carbon monoxide poisoning, and it just hurt my heart. So I really appreciate you helping me with that. But ultimately, I think that's what humility really is humility in action. I think in words it's different, but humility in action is a different game. When it comes to how I got there, yeah, I mean, tons of mistakes. I've been making mistakes my
Yeah.
whole life.
You don't,
Yeah,
I fail forward, buddy, man. That's,
yeah,
that's the way to do it. Fail forward.
always. I mean, more than I can even describe. 1,800 episodes of the podcast, not a single one of them was perfect. And then so I have this learning loop that I created. It's super simple. It's 5 steps. The first step is belief. Believe in yourself, or believe in the cause, or believe in the person, or believe in whatever it is, belief. And then it's implement. So do something. So I believed that carbon monoxide detectors were important. I implemented it and I did that. And when you implement, you get feedback. And then you reflect on the feedback. You have a new experience now that you have to reflect on. And then when you reflect, you learn. And then when you learn, you improve. And then when you improve, you go back to belief, hopefully. Unfortunately, most people get to the implement part, they fail, and then they quit. And so I've been failing forward the whole time. I started out as a fitness coach, and then I was a mindset coach, and then I was a life coach, and then I was a peak performance coach, and then I was a business consultant, and then eventually I landed on business coaching. And so I think everything is sort of constantly expansion, refocus, expansion, refocus, expansion, refocus. And all of us are figuring out and refiguring out who we are and how we can best maximize our potential and serve in alignment with what's actually profitable. And I think that that's a game, an infinite game that never ends, but we're all playing these finite games within these infinite games. So for example, this one podcast episode is a finite game, but the infinite game of becoming the best podcaster that I can be is something that I'm always pursuing.
Right. That's fantastic. And just, this episode will probably be aired right before October. That's kind of what the path is with my other episodes that are planned out. So remember, everyone, little public service announcement that October is Fire Prevention Month. And what happens? What do firefighters deal with as well? They deal with carbon monoxide calls and carbon monoxide alarms that they have to go check and see and make sure everything's okay. So public service announcement that I always do every year in the October timeframe. I get on my socials and I just tell people, hey, listen, if you don't have carbon monoxide in your house, carbon monoxide detectors in your house, please put them. And even if you have an all-electric house, I really still want you to have them, because there's always vehicles, unless you're fully electric, everything, no combustible gas anywhere in your home or in your garage, because I've had runs too where someone accidentally, they got home, they were tired, they accidentally left their car because of the push button. They thought they pushed a button. They didn't. They got out and they went up, they went to bed. And I mean, thank goodness that person didn't die. But, they had a carbon monoxide detector that screamed at them that said, hey, levels are high. So everybody get a carbon monoxide detector on every floor of your home. And if you can, mine are tied into my alarm system through Ring. So my fire and carbon monoxide are one, as well as standalone carbon monoxide ones that are in my bedroom, in my hallways, in my, in strategic areas. $15 to $35. Everybody invest in it, please. so
I
thank you for
appreciate
bringing
it.
that back
I
up. You know,
appreciate it. Yeah.
I don't really too often. I won't go into the story. This is not the space for that. If you want to hear more about that story, you can go to the Elevate podcast, where I talk about my first responder mental health podcast over there. And that story is sprinkled in now and again, and along with the struggles that I had mentally health wise because of that incident, and how I'm better now, and why I raised my hand for help. So, but yeah, so sorry, little public service announcement in the middle of this. I appreciate it. And I thank you for bringing it back up so I could do that, in the fact that sometimes I lose track of when my episodes are going to go live. And there's certain things, like some of the other day I had a pre-call, and she's like, hey, by the way, she was an artist. She was a singer. And she's like, hey, when we have our podcast, what time of year will that be? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, well, it depends on when you schedule. I'm like, why do you ask? She goes, well, I've got a new Christmas song coming out. I'd love to feature it on your episode. I'm like, oh, heck yeah. I'm like, we're definitely doing that. Let's talk about like mid-November. That's like right when Christmas starts, in my world. So I'm like, yeah. Like, she's like, I'm sorry, I don't want. I'm like, no. This is what it's about. This is me helping you and you helping me. I'm going to be able to promote that podcast with your music, and it's going to help promote you because I'm putting your music out there into the world. I'm like, this is what it's all about. So, so everybody, with that being said, how we collaborate and help one another by being on people's podcasts. Tell us how to get a hold of you. Where do we find you? Where do we find your information? Where do we see your splash page? Like all that. Don't get me wrong. It'll all be in the link below, but go ahead and verbally say where to find you and how to get it plugged in with your services.
So the Next Level University, it's pun intended. It's the mountain that gets higher as you climb it. There's always a next level, no matter how hard your past has been or how hard your present is. You have a bigger, better, brighter future if you take responsibility and learn how to be better. And that's the pun intended. Next Level You. The podcast is called Next Level University, but the pun is Next Level You, because the best version of yourself, the next level version of yourself. So you can go to the podcast. It's holistic self-improvement in your pocket, 1% improvement every single day from anywhere on the planet, completely free, health, wealth, life, and love. And then we have a website called nextleveluniverse.com, not to be confused with Next Level University. The person who has that URL is charging way too much money
to grab it, right?
You
got to get the Tony Robbins level before you can do that.
Exactly. Next Level Universe, and maybe not even then, because I don't like the guy. So nextleveluniverse.com, it encapsulates everything we do. We've got monthly meetups, we have a book club that we do, we have a group coaching program, we have online courses, we have a journal called the Dreamliner that I use every day. So everything's there, nextleveluniverse.com, or you can check out the podcast Next Level University. And it's all about how to be the next level version of you.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. Well, I appreciate it. I do have one more comment, and I'm a face person. Like, I recognize people, like, where have I met you before? And I've never met you, but I can understand why some people may think of the arrogancy with you is because you look a lot and act a lot like Tom Cruise. And a lot of people think that he's arrogant. Like your mannerisms, like if you could get his voice down, you've got some of his mannerisms, man. Like weird, like in a good way. Like, I love Tom Cruise. I love his acting. I mean, him as a person, that's one thing, but I love his acting. I love his comedy. I mean,
I've gotten that before. I don't understand. I've gotten that before. Yeah. My business partner, Kevin, said that. He said,
you look like
the Tom Cruise eyes.
You do. It's not just your eyes. It's your connection, it's your interaction. Like he said,
it's my intensity too. He said,
your intensity is very much Tom Cruisey. Yeah, Tom Cruisey. I just made that up. You smile, like it's everything, dude. I mean, and I don't think it's a bad thing, because like I said, I enjoy Tom Cruise. I think he's a wonderful actor, and what he does for our entertainment world is amazing. So I think it's a good thing. I don't know if I believe in all of his personal stuff, but I can separate the two. People don't believe in some of my stuff. I can say, guess what? You can have your opinions, and I can still like you, and I don't agree with your opinions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you just
Um,
didn't have blonde hair, man, that's all. Like
no kidding.
diet black and go as Tom, go
For
as
Halloween, I'll be
yeah,
Tom Cruise.
for Halloween, and just watch some of his shows. And like when he does some of his laugh, there is a guy out there that actually mimics Tom Cruise, and he looks so much like him. Like whoa, that's a twin brother. But
No
other than that,
kidding.
so sorry, I wanted just to
That's
lighten the mood
okay.
a little
Don't be
bit. Yeah,
sorry. It's all good. I'm not offended by any of that. I appreciate it. And
no
it's
problem.
funny because I've had that happen. Like someone has said that before, so it's
Yeah.
obviously a thing. That's interesting.
Well, and I think it's also the way that you form your words and you've had training with delivery and vocal delivery and how to tell a story. I can tell because there's times when I'm more where you get more engaged with your story and people lean into that story because of the way that you're fluctuating your voice and your delivery. And there's a lot of that in Tom as well. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
appreciate it. I've been trying really hard to improve my oratory. Kevin always jokes. He's like, dude, no one even knows what oratory means.
I totally know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
you
I'm a
do or you
voice
don't?
actor, so
Yeah,
yeah,
of course you
I'm a
do.
voice
Yeah,
actor. I've been through vocal
So
training. Yeah, I get
yeah,
it. Yeah.
it's I appreciate it. Thank you. I take that as a compliment. It's been thousands and thousands and thousands of little improvements compounded over time.
Yeah. Well, just like I look back at the very first time, it wasn't even called a podcast back then, but when I first started my voiceover business, it's still on my YouTube. When you're watching this on YouTube, if you really want to see something funny, go back and look at one of my very first episodes on
How long
YouTube that I
ago was
put on.
that?
I think we're at 7 years now.
No
But it's the
kidding.
same
Yeah.
room. It's the same room. It's a different angle, and there's none of the soundproofing. And I wasn't a voiceover actor at the time. I was literally like, I'm becoming a voiceover actor. Let me start this this journey of following it. And I did really good in the beginning, and then it kind of fell off. And now I've got a lot more content because of my podcasting. But I mean, now looking back, I'm like, man, I should have started podcasting when I was actually podcasting for intros and outros for clients, because that's how I got into podcasting. I was the welcome to the No Bullshit Show, your host, blah blah blah, and
Really?
yeah, I was doing the voiceover for your podcast per se. Like, oh, we want an intro for a podcast, let's get a voiceover that introduces us. I was hired for that. So
Cool.
that's how I got started in podcasting and helped a guy out with his podcast. And then he was like, hey, you're really kind of knack for this. Do you want to be a co-host? And I'm like, nah. And then one day I was, and it was fun. And then that moved into another podcast of his, and then moved into another. And then I started thinking, well, I've hosted a couple of these now, and kind of took over the conversation. I'm like, I could probably do this, So I'm like, so that's when I did my first responder mental health course. I decided one of the ways to promote that course was to start a podcast with that.
Nice.
And then I'm like, okay, well, I have a business for voiceover and for podcast coaching. I can't do that inside the mental health space, so let me start a new podcast, Ignition Path Podcast. Here we are. So
Nice. Very
so
cool.
that's my little sprinkle story. So yeah, so it's just one of those things where, like you said, and the reason why I say that is that rolling next level, to get to the next level of the mental health process that I was wanting to help my first responders on, I needed to do something different. And that different was start a podcast for that. And then as I'm starting to do that, and I still have people calling me saying, hey, I'm seeing your podcasting. Tell me how to do it. Show me how to do it.
Nice.
And I started helping people for no money, and it went bad. And you're like, well, wait a second. So it went bad, not only internally, reasons or whatever I didn't want to do anymore. It was because there was no upfront, reward, so I'm like, okay, well, I know enough now that I can coach people on how to podcast. And now, like you say you've helped hundreds of people and you have 30 clients. I've helped a lot of people, and now I have actual clients. So it's and I love serving them. I was texting one of my clients last night, and he was so thankful that I came into his world. When you make a connection with a client in the coaching process, there's a lot to say when they're humble enough to send you a message that, hey, listen, I'm sitting here in my quiet time thinking how awesome it was to be learning from you.
The best.
And yeah, and that's you. There's no other better compliment than that, and I got one last night. So I'm
nice.
that'll last me.
That's the juice right there.
Yeah, it is.
That's what keeps you driven. 100%.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, Alan, thank you so much for coming on the Ignition Path podcast. Your insight and your explanation, your backlog, your back history is so important of the path that you got where you are. It's proof everybody out there that you just fail forward. Don't worry about failing. Don't worry about what to do next. Just imperfect action beats perfect action every day of the week, right?
Every day of the week.
So just get into action. And that's a big message that I like to live by, and I'm sure that you promote as well. Just get into action, do it imperfectly, learn from your mistakes, fail forward, and just do what you feel is what you need to be doing in your life. So thanks again, Alan, for coming on the Ignition Path podcast. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe. All of Alan's stuff will be in the bottom here, and hope you'll reach out to him and get your business to the next level and level it up just like he likes to do.
Thank you for having me, Kyle. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Ignition Path, fueling the entrepreneurial fire.